Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Happy New Year, everyone. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Crane?
Here.
Mrs. Egan?
Here.
Ms. Catalina? Mr. Heyer?
Here.
Mr. Need?
Here.
Mrs. McGinnis? Mrs. Horst?
Here. Mrs. McGinnis sends her apologies. She is attending to a family matter this evening. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community hearing. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated on the agenda in items 3 and 9. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3 is citizens' request to address the board. You are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under item 3.1, you can request to address the board on any topic on tonight's agenda. Under item 9, you are welcome to address the board on any topic. When making comments, please state your name and address. Direct your comments to Mrs. Kelly Horst, President. Each person may speak for up to 2 minutes. Per established procedures, the board will not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment. And per our established procedures, the sign-in sheet is over on the side table, and we need you to fill out the sign-up sheet completely to be acknowledged by the chair to address the board. So Mrs. McLean, if we can check and see if there's anyone who so far has requested to address the board on tonight's agenda. And obviously a sign-up sheet will stay there for anyone who would like to sign up and address the board under item 9. Let me just do a quick check. Okay. Okay, it looks like I only have one person who wants to address the board on an agenda topic, and so when we get to item 5, I will call on Mr. Bialis. Otherwise, we will hold everyone else until item 9. Again, when we get to, or if you want to address the board, if you find during the meeting when we get to item 9, just please sign up and fill out the form completely so you can be recognized by the chair tonight. Item 4 is superintendent update. I will turn it over to Dr. Ryan for our first update of 2022.
Thank you, President Horst. First for us, I'd like to wish our entire community, our school community, a Happy New Year. We appreciate you coming out this evening. We're hoping you're off to a good start. Obviously, as we ended year 2021 and we proceed into 2022, many of the things that we carried with us as a school district and a community, we still carry with us moving forward into this new year. We have a positive attitude collectively as an organization, as a school district, and I can speak for our entire Board of Education. But we know we have challenges ahead, and we know that we have to continue to bring forth maximum effort to support every single child that goes to school here in Clarkson Community Schools. There's many different things that we're facing along the lines of both safety and security. I know that was on everybody's hearts and minds over the last month as we ended 2021 with the Oxford tragedy. And I took it upon myself as our superintendent team with my administration and our board to not take a reactionary, as easy as it would be to fall kind of into throwing everything in the kitchen sink or looking for quick fixes. We took more of the stance to do an evaluation to look at the overall security and safety of every school building in Clarkston and our procedures. And to the point where we have carried through this year already, I have to report back to the community that we are prepared in terms of the safety of our buildings. As it existed, and what we've done in the past in terms of preparation, whether it be the ALICE training, which all of our employees and students have been through, or looking at the locks that we put on our doors, when we did our last bond and all the revisions. All those parts make an overall safety layer, at least of the 3 different layers within our school buildings. We looked at it as that is part of what we can do, but we felt that there's always opportunities to do more. And to that end, We did it at a very first evaluation within our buildings, thought we could even do better in terms of our security of our doors. And over our holiday break, tip my hat to Mr. Lucido in the second row there, and Mr. Goodman in our facilities department installed night locks on almost every single door in Clarkson Community Schools to add just another area of protection. That seemed to me low-hanging fruit. Other areas, though, as I see other school districts start to put in procedures and policies, I think are premature in terms of evaluating the entire system's approach to safety and security. And I got this insights from speaking at length with our Oakland County Sheriff's Department and their security divisions and recommendations of a more comprehensive review of every single building in Clarkston and looking at not only what the physical safety in terms of the buildings, but our procedures and how we react to any threat that we have for staff and students. To that end, tonight we have a proposal for approval for what we believe, after researching it, the best possible security firm that specializes in school security. I would like this firm to evaluate, again, every single building in Clarkston to provide our community, myself, our administration, and our staff and community a unbiased and outside opinion and review of all of what we're doing in terms of keep our community safe. And we would like to come back on the 14th of February, based on the approval of that proposal this evening, to be able to share with the community the results. And I want to make it fully public. Whatever they say, I want to make it things that we need to address, we'll need to address. I look at that as kind of a systems approach. I think that's the most pragmatic way to kind of carry through and make sure that we are doing this one step at a time and doing it right. I feel like the last time we did major security upgrades, that's how we did it. We didn't just willy-nilly put it together. We had a bigger plan in mind. And that is my hope, not only for this evening to get that approval, but that as we move into February, it's not going to simply be that one-dimensional in terms of procedures and physical plan, but we'll come also with a review from our various departments within the school district to also share information on our updated review of our threat matrix in terms of responding and evaluating students that may be potentially a threat to themselves or others. I think that is something that needs to be shared and updated with our community. And overall mental health supports across the district for students and staff as well, to be able to vet that and be able to share that as a comprehensive package to look at really safety is not simply as a one-dimensional piece, but really as a comprehensive approach. And I would hope once we get the insights provided on this report on the 14th, that with the support of the board, we'll be able to make some good decisions moving forward for our community and get community input along the way. I mean, this is really a community approach. Our community is as safe as we want it to be, and the message I've received in many different layers through emails, calls, and personal meetings is that we want more. We expect more, and we want to make sure that we have peace of mind for our individual staff and for our students. So that's with the safety security piece. Obviously, the other big area and challenge has to do with COVID, with the Omicron variant, and operationally effective way to keep school open and our staff and students safe. As we've started this year, like many school districts across Michigan and across the United States, Clarkson Schools is right now fully operational, and our goal, and I'll say it right off the top, is to keep our students in school learning in school. To do that, though, there's challenges as it relates to making sure that we can properly staff based on people who are infected positively. Right now, as I got the most updated numbers, we have 200 active cases of COVID right now, and 26 of those are among staff members. And we had 59 cases just today. Now, what that means in terms of we're going to continue to do our best to keep our doors open and keep kids in school, but there's operational challenges to having large numbers of staff members who can't come to work. I saw some recent reports this week that suggest that nationwide this could be one of the largest number of sick outs over the next couple of weeks in the history of our country in terms of when they've been posting and capturing these type of labor statistics. So I think it's going to be a challenge for us as a school district to keep our doors open. I take also great pride and want to give credit to Mr. Lucido and our Human Resources Department, who has taken this as a long-term approach of really trying to have in-depth as much support and coverage we can for all positions, because it's not simply to say that we have a classroom teacher. I mean, we have an entire support crew of bus drivers and parapros and office personnel that make our schools operate every day. And yes, you know what, there's been an amazing amount of utility with our employees really stretching to make sure that we cover all the spots every day. But I'm telling you, as much as they make it look easy many days, you really have to look at the challenges of making these covers really has landed on the shoulders of our employees and our administration to make sure that we can kind of keep operating. And it's not easy, and I can tell you the reflection of meeting and being out in buildings today, they're struggling. And they want me to know, and I want to make sure we know as a community that, you know, we're going to do our best, but we're hoping that this quickly passes so that we can get to some sense of the new normalcy of whatever that looks like in terms of COVID and pushing on. But we're doing our darndest to make sure that we keep kids in school. So one, I want to make sure our community hears that. I heard as early as today that Waterford is looking at some surrounding school districts, so moving virtual for the short term just based on staffing, just being able to keep their classrooms and schools open. We're not at that critical red line right now, but when you have the number, you know, upwards of 60 cases in a day, that could quickly spiral and the situation can change, and I want to make sure our board and our community hears that from me. And also, again, that commitment that we want to keep our doors open. We want to make sure kids are in school because we know that's where they belong, and we want to do it with the best in the most supportive way we can. So that is a big message, and again, a thank you to our employees. A thank you to our employees that are helping making this work each and every day. So along COVID, we're going to keep fighting the fight, and we'll keep updating you as time goes on. So those are the two major areas I wanted to make sure to report back on.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. We'll move on to item 5, presentation items. We only have one tonight, 5.1, Board Appreciation Month recognition. Dr. Ryan?
Thank you. And this really is on behalf of all of our administration and employees of Clarkson Schools. I wanted to take a moment tonight to let everybody know January is our school board. It's a national recognition month, and across hopefully the state and this country, communities are taking pause, as I will tonight, to make sure that we don't forget those individuals who week after week, month after month have shown up in probably, I want to say arguably, some of the most difficult times that schools, communities, and our country has faced, and have done it with a sense of grace, fortitude, and sense of strength and purpose day after day. And I think that the school board in Clarkston exemplifies not only a school board that stretches to educate themselves to be the best board in terms of governance and caring and investing in their community, but we have a board of education here that they don't show up here obviously for the fame, and it doesn't really pay except a volunteer stipend, kind of like jury duty, but they take month after month of whatever they need to do to be here for the kids in this community. And I think we're fortunate not only to have individuals that are committed, educated, and forward-thinking, but we're lucky to have a school board that has the right heart with kids at the focus of everything they do. And I've been incredibly fortunate through the last several years as your superintendent to be able to work with this group of individuals. And I know from my conversations with other superintendents in other school districts, it doesn't always operate fully as an integral kind of team. You know, we have a governance angle with oversight in terms of the finances, the policies, and the procedures of how we operate the school district. And you have kind of an executive branch. It's a mini kind of microcosm of government. And we know right now there's not many good examples of good governance going on within our country right now. Sometimes I think we can also say that our school boards across the country have operated in some format as the highest working form of government some days in terms of how direction is provided within a community. As that might give you pause or even for me to think or say, it does give me comfort in Clarkston at least that we have such high quality individuals or whether to step up and to make it happen. So on behalf, again, myself, our administrative team, and I know from our school community, I just want to say thank you. We really appreciate everything you've put in there in terms of heart to bring it here. And honestly, I could not, on any form of imagination, and I know I speak for our administrative team and our teachers, think that we could have had the level of grace and everything that you have brought to these very turbulent and difficult times. So thank you, and please keep serving, and again, we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan.
And we have a small token for you from our team, just to say thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the kind words. I know there's one citizen who'd signed up to address the board tonight, Mr. Bialis.
Thank you, Daryl B. Ellis, 5415 Old Saybrook Road. I want you to see my face as I try to follow what Dr. Ryan just said, even though I don't know how I could. I'm here on behalf of the Clarkson Education Association to thank you as school board members for all that you do for our school community. I want you to know that we know as a CEA that it's a difficult job to steer the ship. And thinking over the last 2 years, Dr. Ryan said it earlier, it has not been easy doing what we do in the trenches every day, but to know that we've got a Board of Education that is there supporting us and doing their best to provide us with the resources that we need to navigate through this pandemic, it makes it a little bit easier. So again, I just want to thank you, and in recognition of your commitment to our schools and our community and our students, and in honor of School Board Appreciation Month, the CEA is going to be donating a book to each of the Learning Commons in all of our buildings in your name. And this year, I'm excited to say that we're going to donate one to the Early Childhood Center as well. We know that they've got a little bookshelf, we'll call it a library, out by the main entrance there for the little kiddos. And so we're gonna continue what we've done in the past and expand a little bit. So again, on behalf of the CEA and all of its members, thank you for everything you do to move Clarkson Community Schools forward and to provide our students with the quality public education that they deserve. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for your comments. I will just say there's one other body to thank here. I think that has made us such a high-functioning team here, and I do want to thank our community. And I know there are several in the audience tonight, and over the last couple of years, we've had upwards of 1,000 participate here. I think it really is what makes us a strong team, and certainly there have been times in the last couple of years where maybe this room has been more heated than others, but quite honestly, I think it's what has helped make Clarkston a pretty good place to sit in this seat, even though it hasn't maybe always been the most pleasant place to sit in. It hasn't always been fun to have to hear some of the comments. I think we have a very active community that cares very much about its kids and how we're educating them, and you know, where those kids are going to go when they leave Clarkston. And I, for one, have always appreciated, and I think I can speak for all of my colleagues up here, we have always appreciated parents who speak up and advocate for their kids, whatever that position is. And I feel like our position is to listen to every side of every person's story and consider that when we sit up here and make decisions about the kind of school district that we want to have. So if I can just, you know, acknowledge your thanks, Mr. Bialis, but also thank the community for being as active as you are and helping direct us and steer us. So we will continue on with our meeting this evening. Item 6 is action items. 6.1 is approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approves the personnel changes listed on the attached sheets.
Support.
And I know Mr. Lucido is here. I had asked if he would just quickly explain we had a late addition this afternoon, and I know, Dr. Ryan and Mrs. McLean sent a quick email, but for the sake of transparency that we're going to vote on tonight for our public who may not have been able to see any late addition, could you just quickly explain the
we
one
added,
request?
I apologize for the late entry, but
Fine.
we are requesting an additional ESL teacher. We have grant funding available for this, and reviewing our staffing late last week and today. Oakland Schools is recommending that all of our intervention are done with a certified teacher. We're using some basically instructional aides to do some of that. One of them is going on maternity leave, and another one is reducing to part-time. So we just thought with the funding available, this is the perfect time for us to add an additional teacher, and we did not want to wait till the next board meeting. So my apologies for the late entry.
Great. No, I just appreciate the explanation. Are there any other questions for Mr. Lucido on the personnel report? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of security education consultant's proposal for services. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education authorize the administration to execute a contract for a district-wide assessment of our security, safety, and emergency preparedness for a total of $30,000 to secure education consultants as presented.
Support.
Are there any questions or discussion from the board on this proposal? No? I think Dr. Ryan explained in his report, and certainly this is what you alluded to last month in terms of wanting to think through what we're doing and then bring an update back to the community. And I think just adding this outside expertise is wanted to push this out a little bit from the end of January, which is what we initially discussed. But we'll be bringing this then back to the board and to the community in February instead of late January.
And that was the first availability that we can
Yeah.
have to get appointments. And it'll be fast. It'll start coming in the next 2 weeks.
I would imagine this group is incredibly busy at this
Yes.
time. Right. All right, seeing no questions or discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.3 is second reading approval of policies. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the revised policies as presented.
Support.
Mrs. Egan, were there any other questions or discussion provided after last month's meeting?
I received none, and as we all received in the mail today, email today, that, there was just a pronoun change in one of the policies. Other than that, there were no changes.
Great. I was satisfied, being no legal reason, that we were going to keep it as is.
Right, it's
rather
more
than
for
make the change.
consistency with the pronoun usage that we're using in our other policies.
We're going to keep it as it was.
Yes.
Okay, seeing no other questions or discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We'll move on to item 7, report items. 7.1 is our facilities update. I'll turn it over to Mr. Goodman.
Good evening. Might need Heidi's help pulling up the pull up junior high. No program. I think you might. Can we run it from over here? You'll have to move it. Okay, that's fine. We're going to talk mostly about this page, I think, in the beginning. So Tom Vandegrind's here with me tonight, and we're going to, just to reiterate, we've been here since early October, as you know, working through the master plan over the last year, updating the 5-year master plan, which led us into the Clarkston Junior High, and looking to what it would really look like to replace that building, as we recommended, based on the age of the building and the cost of renovations. We were recommending a replacement, and so gathering that information, we have we had tours with the Clarkson Junior High staff back in October and in November, and then in December we provided this list, but we didn't really give a presentation to it. So this is the program that you were provided. I'm going to have Tom really speak to it, high level, and then we're going to give you a little over drawings that we have just to kind of show how that would look on that site, and certainly here for any questions you have. Thank you.
Mrs. McLean, is there any way to increase the size of that so we can, just on the screen? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, as Wes said, when we went through the master plan process and identified the junior high as a big component, it's a very complicated project, and so we needed to dig deeper to program it with your staff. What does it really want to be when it's new? And what kind of facility is it going to be? Is more than just the old component of it wearing out. It's a 21st century educational facility if you're going to build something new. So all that programming went through some tours, et cetera, to decide what should that building be in terms of 21st century concepts. That was all put into the meetings we had with your staff. Then we developed this program, which we sent to you last time, which is a list of all the spaces. The spaces on the left on this sheet are a summary of all the major components in the building. The next column lists the square footage for each one of those components. And then the next column to the right of that is it says TS at the top of it. That stands for teaching station. That says it's defined by the Department of Treasury. so you can use that. That's what we use to evaluate the capacity of the building in terms of student count. So you can see the multi-use learning environment at the top, which is basically classrooms, has 32 teaching stations. A lot of those down below are zeros because they're not considered teaching stations for capacity as it relates to Department of Treasury. At this point, we have another column there that's for master plan. They are all the same right now because we're intending to bring this forward as a complete project. If some of it were to say, hey, we need to wait on that component of the building, it would slide over into that master plan column. When we looked at this building, it's got a unique issue that there are 3 components that are going on that site. There's the junior high, then there's the facilities, your district facilities component that's in that building, then there's a relationship with your life skills program, which is your post-high, your adult special needs program. And so we looked at that and it ended up developing 3 programs for all 3 of those. Those, when you saw multiple programs, that's what those were for. The big one is the junior high. That's this one here. That's the majority of the need. The other 2 define those other programs, and we'll get into those a little bit when we show you that on site. This program, again, I'll go through what's in there right now. There are some criteria, design criteria, and some site explanation. They're under some of the first sheets. Then it goes into the multi-use learning environments. Those are all the classroom components. There are then a couple things after that I would say are some of those 21st century spaces that support classrooms that you don't have right now. Multi-use learning environment support with project rooms and extended learning areas, some breakout rooms, those group areas. Those are things the building does not have and were not included in 1950 kind of designs. After that are some pretty standard groupings, your science component, art, music, learning commons, media center component. Physical education is all the gymnasium spaces and locker rooms, etc. Then there's your career technical education, a couple different programs, a smaller STEM program, and then the construction trades program, sort of a unique program you have. That program does include, again, all the things that they're are desiring to add on to that program. So that is a little bigger than what they have now. That's including some addition to that program. Student support services, sort of the special ed components. The junior high piece is what's listed in this building for junior high. The post-high, that's the one that refers to a separate program. And that one you received as a document similar to this, but only like 4 or 5 pages. The auditorium is primarily existing. That's what we're looking at. About 19 to 20,000 square foot of that is your existing auditorium. The 5,000 to 6,000 square foot of additional space in that line item is for some additional things your auditorium performing arts center does not have. Dressing rooms, some costume storage, expanded scene shop, things like that. The next things are staff support things, restrooms and rooms, conference rooms for them. Administration, student services are basically the front office, and then food service and some miscellaneous spaces. Again, the last one, there's a district maintenance that's a part of that, where Wes's group is right now. And that's, again, we're looking at pulling them out and putting them in a different location. And that's the separate program that you received as well. To cut to that we'll show you that on the plan, but the maintenance we're looking at moving to be in addition to your existing transportation facility. So the square footage is total up there. All the sheets behind that you look at basically define, we won't go into all those sheets, but there's several, I think it's 50 or 60 pages. So for example, if you went to physical education, you'll find a breakout of that 55,000 square feet. What does that include? And we've gone through some fairly detailed programming with your staff. So it shows 3-station gymnasium, a 1-station auxiliary gym, locker rooms, training facilities, weight room, et cetera, et cetera. It shows all that breakout and even some detail of what's in those that gives you that 55,000 square feet. Every one of those major categories has that breakout in sheets behind. The total then, when you look at your math there, is 233,000 square feet and 54 teaching stations. The plinth number, everyone always asks, what is that? That's an architectural category that basically is all non-program space, the glue that pulls that all together. The biggest component of it is corridors and hallways and things that get you to all these spaces. And that is just sort of a historically standard number that you use at 35% on any program space that lets you get done when you draw the building, that it ends up being about 35% additional space to pull it all together. So that totals, at this point, $314,705. Again, you can see the master plan is the same right now because we've done no prioritization to say none of this is, some of the parts of this are not going to get built now. We'll push that off to a master plan. So they're the same number. So some of those numbers, we did a little bit of work on that from the last time we talked to you, to compare them. Your existing junior high is 232,513. So 233,000 as compared to 314. The biggest change to the building from this program to what you have programmed from 1955 is specifically classrooms are right-sized to what we would do in today's environment. You're changing from sitting at a desk and just taking notes from someone on a chalkboard to project-based learning where you need to spread out and do group work. So today we spend a lot more square footage per student in a classroom. So it's right-sizing all of your classrooms to today's kind of standard. That's a big part of it. The other piece is those support spaces to classrooms, extended learning areas, breakout rooms, these project rooms where project stuff can happen. None of those exist right now in your existing building. And then one of the components that you have in your building that also changes some of the math is your construction trades is a unique program that has some square footage that might not exist in other types of junior highs. If you compare that square footage, just to say how does that compare to what we have in other buildings in your district, if I take that 314,000 square feet and I subtract the auditorium and I subtract the construction trades, that ends up being a very similar program to your your middle school, Sashball Middle School, and has the same grade configuration. 2 grades at that building, 2 grades at this building. They end up almost identical in terms of square footage. The square footage of this building, there's 26,000 something for the auditorium. When I subtract that and the construction trades, I come to 270,355. The middle school is 270,713. So they're within 500 square feet of each other. So comparison of academic area to academic area, aside from the auditorium and the construction trades being unique at the junior high, they're very similar. So the comfort, I think, for you to say, is that building over-designed because it looks big? I think it's very similar to what you have at the middle school. Comparison to your high school, 430,000 plus square feet. So you can see it's 3/4 of that. And then the teaching stations, right now you have 53 teaching stations in the junior high. This is proposed for 54, so it's, again, very, very similar. We're not seeing any need right now for any growth. It's basically the same number of teaching stations, just adding that space, right-sizing them. I think that's everything on the program. Obviously, there's lots of detail behind there that if you had questions on, we could go into.
Any questions on the numbers? Okay.
So the next thing we're going to go into is we took this program, which is all those architectural spaces and square footages, and started to overlay it on the existing building. And that's the complexity of this project that we want to understand to some degree. We'll go into, if this became a project, we'd spend 12 months to 14 months designing this project. And we obviously don't have that kind of effort to put into it right now, but we want to know as well as we can what are the complexities of this project to properly budget for it. As we looked at that, there's a big piece we looked at with you in terms of the master plan. What is this project really going to cost if we tackle this? So we're studying that right now, and this is the first attempt. We've had a few meetings with your staff kind of looking at the bubbles and pieces, but overlaying it on your existing site. So this first one, again, is trying to show you how those pieces overlay on the existing site. Very conceptual. Again, you're not seeing all the detail of each little area, and I guarantee you a final project, things will move around. But it's trying to understand how it might work. So what you're seeing there is the Google image below is your existing site, and all those boxes, colored boxes, are the main components you saw in that program. For example, the auditorium, the gyms, the auxiliary gym. There's delineation in between those, but those are overlaid on your existing building. The best way we see it working educationally with your staff, especially Adam, who's been helping with that. So the main thing that we're looking at, which starts the organization of this, is that white box to the bottom left-ish, the middle left, existing auditorium. That, we're looking at trying to keep that and trying to save that piece. The rest of the building, for the most part, is going to be replaced. We are also attempting to keep the bottom orange box that says construction lab. That would be that construction trades component that we were talking about earlier. We're attempting to reuse some of that space. That's still being studied, but those are the only two places that we're talking about keeping. The rest of it would be a puzzle piece where we build and tear down and build and tear down. Fairly complicated. We just started some of that with AUK, your construction manager, just started to study this. We had some meetings today with them to understand the complexity of construction here. What are the concerns they might have about things? So we might tweak this plan with some of their thoughts in terms of constructability. Those components are the two we're trying to keep. I'll give you a real simple understanding of the building. To the top, we're looking at having that be the entry to the building, separating, trying to work better at separation of the parent and the bus drop-off for students coming in. As you come into the administration on the top, to the right of that plan is where the learning wings are, the classrooms, if you will. We are looking at that most likely being a two-story piece, with those two wings each being 2 stories. And then to the left, the gymnasium, auxiliary gym, the support locker rooms, etc. And then the auditorium to the left. Those spaces all organized around this cafeteria, which is, we're hoping to serve as a commons for the building, so they can use that space for halftime, for intermissions, for anything play-wise, and organizing the entire building. Then some music and STEM and art and stuff have a relationship towards the construction lab. The other places that you see where you see the building would be torn down and returned back to grass, if you will. That's very simple in its layout, but it's turning to be a very complex project because of the grade as well. That is not a site, not a flat site. It's low on the left from the auditorium, and it works its way up the hill to the classrooms. Almost 10 feet of grade change there. So we're in the middle of starting to study all that. How does that really get built? And AUK is helping us with that component. One of the things I should mention about that drawing though yet is last time we were with you, you guys mentioned the potential of this building being on the, I think it's Radley Lake Road property that you own. And we have looked at that. There's some substantial differences from cost to being on that site. And they basically are, as it relates to the building, the auditorium itself, we would have to entirely rebuild. Here we're looking at trying to save that. So there's some cost there that this obviously gets favored. And then the construction lab, we're hoping to reuse that as well. If we do, that'll be even further building pieces that we can reuse versus have to entirely rebuild. All the infrastructure to get here in terms of utilities exists. We don't have any of that at the other property, so we'd have to bring that in. We'd have to deal with roads and parking lots differently than we do here. Here we will be developing them and redeveloping them. We don't have to entirely develop them at the Radley Lake site. Some of the other things that are on that site, you have on this site that we're going to be reusing is the stadium, the ball diamonds, the 2 baseball and softball fields, and some of the practice facilities. So those already exist here as well that we would have to duplicate on that site. So those components are making it fairly different substantially cost-wise to build on that site. We're evaluating it a bit more yet, but just to be frank, that was what we looked at in terms of that site on Radley. The next drawing is just giving you a little bit of an understanding of how that floor plan that you just saw looks in 3-dimension. Again, this is the entry coming, you're at Clarkson Elementary here, basically looking back at it. So the entry would face sort of that direction as you come in. To the left is the classroom wings working their way up the hill. To the right is that gymnasium athletic component. And then they're all working around that bluish piece, which is that cafeteria. The Learning Commons is going to develop that open area that all those spaces can use for collaboration. And then the auditorium staying in the back, the existing music, art, STEM, and the construction lab. Very, very high level. It gives you a little bit of understanding about maybe how those are coming together. I think, I don't know if there are any questions on that. That's about as much detail as we have into that plan at this point.
Trustees, any questions at this point? I mean, this was meant to be just a very high-level If you remember from some of the reports we've been given weekly, that they took groups to go visit other or other junior highs and some other sort of what are considered very innovative facilities. So I don't know if that, would help inform kind of what they're seeing here, or any questions or discussion. I guess I'm always interested in sort of at every one of these phases, what is it you're looking from us, right? I mean, I think there are probably a lot of very detailed questions maybe that we have, but maybe that's not what you need from us at this point. So, if there are specific things other than just general questions you want from us, I mean, this is a long process with a lot more detail to come as you continue to investigate, so.
It is. Yeah, I don't know if Wes, if you want to comment to that. I think what we're looking for is just, we're continuing to develop it, and hopefully we're on the right track. We are, spending some time now moving into a phase where, how does this really work in 3D? Because a big part of it is, what is this going to cost, right? As we look at the master plan and what parts you do and what parts don't fit into that. So we're trying to develop that cost, which is taking some time, more than normal at this stage of the game, to understand how complex is this construction. So that's where we're engaging AUK to understand that a little better for the junior high.
I mean, obviously, we were very clear in our direction, this is when we were meeting back at the high school, that we wanted you to pursue this. Or, I mean, we wanted to look at, what it was going to take to, to look at a new junior high, that we knew that was coming out of the bond previously, that wasn't addressed, that we knew it would have to be addressed, and we needed some real solutions. And so, I mean, obviously, this is something that we're looking at. So I don't know, any thoughts about this is what they've come back to us with. Here's conceptually what it could look like. They've looked at Reese Road, at the property we own there, and said, probably cost-wise, that's not going to be as attractive. I'm looking for some thoughts or reflections from the board. Ms. Egan?
Well, I just think it's worth mentioning that maybe 5 years ago, when we hired GMB as our new architect, we started from the ground up in developing our master plan and refreshing what we could, but also renewing where we needed to go based on, our students and, the current way to be teaching, given that some of our buildings are quite old. And this was part of the master plan. It was not part of the previous bond for the reason that you stated. The funding was just not sufficient. We couldn't borrow that money at the time to do this, as well as to do the safety and security that we wanted to do at the time, and that took precedence over this. So I just think it's worth mentioning, this is why we're looking at it now. I've been on this committee with Mr. Heyer for probably 5 years now, and Mrs. Horst is also now part of this committee. So there is trustee participation in the dialogue as we're going through this and looking at what are the next steps.
Yeah, I think we're on the right track here. I mean, obviously, we've got to be able to execute the plan, and I appreciate you doing the due diligence to determine, with AUK, can we really pull this off? Obviously, we're duty-bound to ask the questions in terms of timeline and budget, and, those are all the things you're working on, so I think we're right on track with where we need to be, and we appreciate, I think, every meeting here in the near future is probably going to have an update on this, and we look forward to more detail really as we go forward at every meeting. And anybody that has any questions between meetings, or you go home and you mention this and you come up with something else, please funnel those through, because we want to make sure we address those through the process here, so we don't have to certainly wait for the next meeting before we get to those kind of things. But this is it certainly is a living, breathing exercise that we're doing together and collaboratively, and appreciate the opportunity to work together. And we've had great experiences thus far with our team, and I think we want to continue to preserve that team and do things that are appropriate for our community, the right learning environments for our kids, given flexibility to change as we know we're going to need to change in the future. So I think we're right where we need to be.
Sorry, Mr. Goodman, I'm sure I stepped in there when you were maybe going to say something. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think, Tom hit it right on, that we're making sure that we're on the right track, that we've been looking at all kinds of scenarios, and it does lead us back to keeping the building on this site and working through it. It is going to be a very challenging project. We had our first kickoff meeting with AUK today, and you know, their minds go right into constructability while you have kids in the school, and so we're going to work through that. We hope to be back to you next month with the number that would really explain the phasing. A project like that, like this, if we were to do it, takes a good year of design. These are really high-level designs, but to get into the details of a building to make it constructability, that is a year, and then it's probably, we're talking, just so you know, 4 phases possibly, over 3 to 4 years to complete it 100%, where we build, move into that area, and then tear down. And like Tom said, the site is very challenging, as it's about a 10-foot difference between the parking lot and the east of the building, going uphill, and it kind of goes uphill to the south as well. But those challenges are doable. That's why there's so many ups and downs in that building right now, which is what we tried to avoid. But yeah, we if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask us. And some of the things, we do have another slide, some of the things that have led to this site, we really wanted to focus on the junior high. We started that with facilities is there in the maintenance shop. It's not ideal to be part of a building, but because we moved into that area as the old high school, we took space that we had. We said let's really figure that out, not be part of a school building, but you know, with the transportation center made sense. But the life skills, and we found that the life skills in adult, or it's life skills in post-high, I'm sorry, are kind of split now. We have 20 kids at the junior high, and there's 40 kids at the Renaissance High School. And the preferred would be to put them all together. And so when we looked at where would that work out best, we started brainstorming. Do we put an addition? Do we add them to the junior high? Does it make sense? And we kind of said no. They don't really need to be part of that. They need to be separate. And then we looked at, should we do an addition to the Renaissance building, and as a potential. And we didn't really like that idea, because that site is confined, and it's a beautiful building the way it sits. And so then it led us to our Independence site. And on this site, we have, as you recall, bought the farm from the Bayless family. And the house is, now we've owned it nearly 20 years, and it's been vacant. So we still have to maintain it, and one of the options would be, how do we deal with that in the master plan? And so we programmed the life skills with all, and post-high, with everybody together, and what it would look like on this site, and have a relationship with, possibly with the family farm, and just having their whole program under one roof. So just something to show you here. It's as we've walked through these things, how kind of ideas come about. But this is kind of showing this box of an 18,000 square foot post-high building on the former Bayless Farm site, Independence Elementary site. I think that's our last slide, but if you have any questions to that.
Yeah, we didn't have a slide specifically of the maintenance facility piece, but it's basically in addition to the existing transportation facility. It's quite simple. Moving that function out of the junior high as we take that over and rebuild that.
Okay. Any last comments or questions at this point?
Looking forward to the next steps.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll continue on with report items. 7.2 is our board reports from our attendance at the MASB annual conference. And per our bylaws, we are required to bring back our report to the community whenever we attend our own professional development. Last month just didn't seem right to be talking about that, obviously, in light of keeping our meeting kind of short and tight with what happened in Oxford. And so we wanted to bring that back here this month. So I'll just start here with Mrs. Crane, and we'll go down the list. Any just reflections on any workshops you attended, or kind of what your takeaways were from the annual leadership conference in November?
Yeah, it was hard. I had to really go back and look at my notes because it had been about 5 weeks. I was able to go early. I attended a pre-conference workshop on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there were a lot of good things in the workshop, but what I found that with the work that Clarkston's been doing for many years, it felt more like that this was geared towards districts starting at zero. And it made me kind of proud that we've really been spearheading this for quite a while already. But I was glad to go. Then the last little bit, we were kind of able to talk about some next steps. It was great, I thought, to be in a room with people again, other school board members in the state. I thought Masb did a great job of putting it together in the middle of the pandemic. The most memorable thing to me was the general session on Friday, which was by Brandon P. Fleming. I've since read his book, Miseducated, which I would wholeheartedly recommend, which I meant to bring for you tonight, and I forgot. I'm sorry. I'll bring it. He was inspiring, dynamic. He was a great speaker. The other one that I really enjoyed, there was another general session on, it was called Data Therapy, Finding Narratives in the Numbers session. And I also did a breakout clinic with that speaker, Kendall Lawson. And again, I was really just taken aback by how much Clarkston already looks at the data to make our decisions. And so while a lot of the people that I was sitting with were looking at how they could take this back to their district and implement some changes, I was just very proud that we are already doing those things. So.
Thank you. Mr. Heyer.
I would echo those remarks. I was most glad to be back in person and interacting and meeting other school board members, collaborating is something I've certainly missed the last couple of years, where we haven't had that opportunity. I really appreciated the keynote sessions. I thought the gentleman, Brandon, that you mentioned was awesome. The Colonel, I thought, was awesome as well. Had the privilege to introduce him and meet him and speak with him, and wherever he's going, I would get right behind him and support him in those ventures. The delegate assembly was nice to take a lot of the work we have done over the past 2 years and finally implement and cement that and put all that into practice. So there were some things in there, nothing earth-shattering or major, but certainly some things that support all of our efforts and inform our legislative positions that got done as well. So I was pleased with that.
Mrs. McGinnis had sent to me just a brief report to share with everyone that she attended several workshops focused on students' mental health, mentioning that all of the presenters' backstories were as diverse as the many issues that districts face when helping our youth. She attended a presentation on the Be Nice program featuring Eric Hipple, former Detroit Lions quarterback who lost his son to suicide at 15 years old. And found out as a follow-up that we have a group active at our high school using this program. And I know I attended pre-pandemic a presentation by Eric Hipple at our high school. I think that must have been 2019, maybe 2018, and heard his story of his own attempt, his own suicide attempt following that, and his own struggle with mental health. So he was a pretty powerful speaker, and I'm sure had our students probably pretty enraptured. I attended a lot of workshop sessions focused on governance, leadership, just to help me in my position here as the current sitting president of our board. And some of the big takeaways that I took were some of the big questions I thought that helped me think about how we do our work and how we lead our work. And we were getting ready to have in December our own self-evaluation, and so they were kind of guiding my thoughts as I facilitated that conversation. Do we have a shared moral imperative as a board? And I think that we do, and certainly as a board superintendent team when it comes to the work of Clarkston schools. And are we committed to doing what's necessary to realize our mission? And how can we as a board better support the district's mission? Those were some of the questions that I took away from the presenters that I listened to. One of them was the group from Troy, who I think is a pretty high-functioning board as well. They shared some resources with us, the tools that they use, the books and the authors that they read and follow. So, I was pretty glad. I think that we also were the only board, maybe, is that right, Mr. Heyer, to have all 7 of us attend this conference. I think we put a pretty high premium on our own professional development. It's a complicated job that we have to do and have to learn a lot about and have to understand a lot of complicated tasks to fold into the decisions that we make, and so I'm proud that all 7 of us make the time to go and to stay on top of the issues and to learn a lot about it. And so I think that says a lot about the value that we place on staying on top of the work that we have to do. Mr. Need?
Sure. I would echo the comments about being nice to be in person finally. It is interesting that many times we're hearing suggestions and ideas from other board members are asking about, and we're doing them in Clarkston. So we're kind of, I think, in a leadership position, at least in my interaction with school board members statewide. Dr. Fleming's speech was dynamic. A gentleman, really a teenage drug dealer who turned his life around with education and is now the assistant debate coach at Harvard University and very, very active in bringing debate into the inner city and bringing those kids along as well. So it was very dynamic, very inspiring. I went to several clinic sessions as well. The one that kind of was a little interesting was from Michigan Virtual Learning. And I know, as Dr. Ryan mentioned before, our goal is to keep all our kids in person, but we do offer a virtual program as a choice for those parents that choose to do that. And I was interested to learn that Michigan Virtual, beyond just the standard curriculum, they also have a substantial social emotional component as well, including some behavior intervention programs that can be used for struggling kids, and as a restorative justice as a place for suspension. So I thought that was interesting. And it was a great conference all along.
Right. Mrs. Egan?
Sure, I won't reiterate. I've been in some of the same sessions, and of course the keynote speakers I thought were excellent. One thing to make the public aware of, since all 7 board members attended parts of this, and I believe this is the 2nd year in a row we did this, we are considered by the Michigan Association of School Boards a Standard of Excellence board. We get that award for coming together and committing as a team to go through this professional development and hear some of the innovative things that are going on in education. Just touching briefly, I attended a CBA class, Creating Trust, a key ingredient in school improvement and student achievement. And just one of the big takeaways was research shows that schools reporting strong trust links across the organization were 3 times more likely to report improvements in math and reading scores. So working very closely with the superintendent and the administrative team is incredibly important, and that was a great reiteration of hearing some of the things that we know and we practice. Some of the breakout sessions that I attended, one was the School Leaders Guide to Michigan School Data, which is a website. It gives a dashboard and how you can read our particular dashboard for our district and compare ourselves to other like districts as well. That was definitely worthwhile. It was a virtual course though, so it wasn't as easy to, you just kind of had to follow along. You really didn't have the opportunity to ask too many questions. And then another clinic session that I attended that I enjoyed was put on by SEG, which is one of our vendors, and it was putting together the puzzle pieces of cyber protection and some of the steps that you need to be going through to protect the integrity of your systems against phishing and some of the training initiatives that you can put your staff through. And I'm happy to report that since SEG is one of our providers that we do that. I also just attended the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workshop also with Mr. Heyer and Mrs. Crane, and found it very interesting for us to take our own inventory to see where we are compared to other districts. So very fruitful trip for me.
Thank you. And we also did receive a scholarship from our County School Board Association for one of us to attend as well, so reimbursed for a part of our cost for attending. Okay, thank you everyone for the time devoted to that and for your reports. We will move on to discussion items. We have one discussion item tonight. Item 8.1 is board operating procedures. Mrs. Crane, I will turn that over to you. This has been a 2.5-year process, started
Yes.
before the pandemic, then put on hold, and then picked back up again. So finally, we have updated the unwritten rules,
Yes.
I believe Mr. Heyer termed them. So
Yes, which Yes, I actually came to that term quite a bit as I was writing the unwritten rules, because, and it would have, so, just so everybody knows, I was tasked with revising and updating our board operating procedures, as at the time, I was just finishing my first year as a board officer, so I was the newest member, and I think you very wisely thought it would be best for the newest person to go back and look and kind of, you know, measure my experience that first year with what we have written. So then the pandemic hit, and then 2 years later, I finally got to it after my third year on the board, 2 years of which were in the pandemic. It was a little more challenging, but I wanted to thank everybody. Once I did get that to you, everyone responded within 24 hours. I had a lot of historical knowledge, expertise, legal help from Mr. Need. And I'm happy to say that there were very, very little conflicting pieces of advice or edits or comments. So this won't take long, but I did want to say thank you, and I think it also goes to show that while we don't always agree, I think we work very well together, and that was very evident as I was doing this. So most of what I did was really just kind of the overall formatting, the tightening up the language, and I was trying very hard to put things in a more cohesive or at least intuitive, order. And I'm not sure if I did that. I'm happy to discuss it further. I'm happy to take more comments, but what you have in front of you is kind of everybody's comments gathered together in here. So first, the introduction and pledge, which was originally in the draft that I sent you, the conclusion and signatures page. And I had the comment and the idea, and I really liked it. Rather than doing it as a conclusion, the idea behind this is to revise, review, and reaffirm it every year at our retreat. So I kind of like having this introduction page and us doing that every year. So that is why that is moved. I also have a CBA class on board operating procedures, but not until February during the Winter Institute. So as much as I think I'd like to pass the torch on this, I think I'd ask to stay on the committee one more year until at least after that class. So in considering that we will do this on an annual basis, I assume it will be an ongoing committee. The Code of Ethics page is not much change there. I really tried just to combine what I thought were repetitive bullets. I think it can be further tightened up a little bit in the future, but it's a really good foundation. The additional 3 bullets, I think it is, as board president, I would just ask that every committee member ask the board president, whoever it is, Mrs. Horst this year, to really read those, to really let us know if there anything needs to be edited, revised, added to those 3 bullets. So I'll stop here. Does anyone have anything on those 2 pages?
Yeah, I think maybe the easiest thing is everyone just sort of follow along.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably the first time you're seeing this with everybody's comments sort of added in and revised from when you saw it a week, or 2 weeks ago. So I would say maybe highlight anything where you've made sort of significant changes. You can add some, have whatever discussion where if you have something that you want to highlight, wherever you have any questions or comments, and we'll put out sort of the final draft until we look at it again in July. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Okay, so that's really getting to the next part is where there were any significant comments. The board district oversight, that fourth section down where there's still a cross out, that was really the only place where there was a lot of comment. Everybody almost commented on that. And it was everything from let's expand it further to let's delete it completely to it's repetitive. So this was really the only place in the entire document that had just a lot of comments, and they weren't really, it was more, and it was, there were no comments as really we have to do this. It was just, I don't really know what this means. And I have to agree, I do think it's a little repetitive, and I would be happy deleting that entire section because I do think, if you read it, the board's review of the district's progress toward goals and accomplishments. The first bullet, board members will be continually guided in what is best for all students in the district. I think that's kind of covered in our code of ethics. The board will annually review the district goals, which I think is in the very first section, the board's approval of the goals. And then at the last part, I'm not sure actually why I even left that in. I think that was unanimously decided to get rid of it. So that was really the one section that had the most, what is this, why is this? Either expand and make it bigger or delete it.
I'd be fine to get rid of it. I think it's covered elsewhere.
That's how I felt as well. Is everybody okay with
When
that?
you say, when you say delete it, which one are you talking about?
I'm
Just that
talking about the
fourth
board's
section?
review of the
Okay.
district's progress toward goals and accomplishments.
Just that whole little
That
baby
whole
section.
and every bullet underneath it. Speaking of, that was another question I did have in the formatting. Would it be better to go to a number bulleted? Because
1A, 2A, 3A.
it used to be like that, but only in certain sections. And then so when I was redoing it, I don't like the way it looks. But I'm happy to do it if it makes it easier to think about it.
I have no preference.
Okay. Okay. So the rest of this is really just an overall 30,000-foot view of what a new board member can expect. You know, what comes from the board, what comes from the administration, and I thought it did a really good job of doing that. Down to the meetings section, I think this is also very well fleshed out. The only thing I would like to add, and I'd like to talk to Mrs. Horst and really anyone who's on the board up here right now, I'd like to add a section on Open Meetings Act, because that is something I felt like I didn't have a firm grasp of when I first started, that I'd like to add a complete section on just the bullet points of what that means and what to follow as a new board member, if anyone is okay, if everyone is okay with that. But other than that, I think this one really does a good job, and again, I tightened up language, I combined some things, and I think it's about as good as it needs to be, minus what I think it needs the OMA.
You know, I had this thought actually over the weekend as I was thinking about when information is posted and how we might change, how information gets changed over the weekend, you know, as we find things and, you know, just presentations change. And I wondered if we want something on here where it says board member, I don't know where it would go, board member preparation for meetings, but since this is how we operate, would we want to put something in here about when things are posted to the website?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's...
Is there sort of a standard? I mean, I know typically when you send us information, I mean, is there sort of a standard of when we put the packet on the website? I'm thinking more for our community, like when is there typically a
I try to
time when the
have everything
community
ready.
knows they can go and look at the packet,
Yeah,
even though
by-
it may change over the weekend, say?
Right, by noon on Fridays is when
By
I
noon
try to
on
have it.
Friday.
What about
on
the
the website.
minutes for the meetings? Do we have a standard?
The minutes I do,
It's okay.
I
We don't have
won't
to do it
say
now.
there's- I won't say there's like a
That's what it's, yeah, okay.
standard timeline right now, but
Yeah.
Typically within the next week.
That's what I
And
would.
they're
mean,
just
like-
draft, obviously, until they're approved at the next regular meeting.
I mean, I would kind of like to have that
Yeah.
in there. I mean, I think it's good for the, you know, for the community to know when they can find a packet. I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but that was just one thing I thought in kind of hindsight. I thought, oh, well, that's not really, I mean, it is sort of one of our unwritten rules.
It
that-
is.
That the community can go and find the packet, you know, knowing that it may change. I mean, I think we say that about agendas as well, that they may change and typically do, as the packet typically does, but knowing when they can go to the website and find it, that might be one bullet I would, I just don't know where it necessarily belongs, but to me, it's part of our whole meeting protocol, is that it gets sent to us and then it gets posted to the website.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will talk to Mrs. McLean and add that in, both, yeah.
It could be that you just say it will be available to the board before the next board meeting, because legally that's what I think we have to do, is we have to approve our minutes at the very next board meeting. And I would leave it at that, because, you know,
Things happen.
yeah, I mean, schedules change, and I don't think we want to pin ourselves down into trying to make it tighter than what we're legally required to do, because there are going to be some times where we are just going to, you know, during the holidays, for instance.
Yeah.
I certainly don't expect, you know, to be getting this, you know, the December meeting minutes
Well, I'm
right?
talking about, there's two different things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking about, the packet and the minutes. I mean, I don't,
Yeah,
yeah,
but-
minutes I'm not necessarily as tied to, but, I mean, as far as the packet goes.
Yeah, I don't know that we should be posting the minutes before we approve them.
Oh,
Right.
no.
But I think getting back to, a board brief kind of scenario of letting our staff and community know if you weren't able to attend the meeting, this is what happened. Here's sort of the crib sheet of, what we did, and I think
Yeah.
our staff and community,
Yeah.
if you want that, you could sign up for it and get it.
I see what you're saying, because the minutes are in the packet.
Yeah,
And
the
we have to
minutes would
approve
be in
them.
the
I
next
gotcha.
packet.
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
So that sort of board brief crib sheet, I think, is
Right.
something that I would love to do more of.
Okay. Moving into the communication section, the biggest change here was that the original draft that I sent you had the original language that stated the board members who receive calls from the media must direct the inquiry to the board president or the district marketing manager. And that has been changed, as it was pointed out there are times it's appropriate to respond from our individual roles. So I changed that language to say that, we have to make it evidently clear that we are responding as ourselves, not for the district, and when it's appropriate, to direct it to the president or the marketing director. So
Right.
that was the biggest change.
I think you
there.
should say district spokesperson,
Okay, rather than
Marketing
marketing director.
because there are times when the superintendent would be the district spokesperson, and it's really up to the superintendent to decide who's going to address what issue.
Is everybody here okay with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, that was really the big one on that one. Others are, again, unwritten rules. If a board member has a concern, bring it to the other board person first. It's a lot of golden rule stuff in there. The new member orientation, I edited most of this based on the memory of my orientation, which I believe was much better than people who've gone before me. I know that Mr. Need and Mrs. Horst did a lot of work in creating what you guys gave to me, and I'm very grateful for that. So I think this was already in pretty good shape because of the work that you guys did. And I did not really get, the only thing I think I added was the expectation of maintaining an honor board.
Yeah.
Which I did add because that is definitely an unwritten rule. I know.
Right. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, it was, and it was something that I think Mr. Heyer told me before I got half of those classes done before, after I was elected, but before I took office, which was really nice. I knew I had to do it, and I did it. And then, actually, it was Mrs. McGinnis, it's a state, I think it's law, that all board members have to be trained on the evaluation tool, so I added that in as well.
Yeah, that is law.
So it's not,
You should probably clarify that superintendent.
Superintendent evaluation.
okay,
Yes.
yep. Okay. Okay, so the board development, which is the last section, and again, if anybody has any issues with the order of these sections, let me know. I think they're in the most logical sense at this point, but I'm happy to discuss. So really, I guess this was the only conflicting advice I got here is some people were saying that we should write down in the unwritten rules that the role of vice president, the expectation is often that they will be the next president. And then I had people who came back and said, no, we shouldn't write that in at all. So that was really the only direct, yep, add it, nope, don't. So my thoughts were, it is an unwritten rule. I do think that that is the expectation most of the time. I have no problem putting it in because it doesn't mean that you have to take presidency if you're the vice president, but the expectation is that's where you're heading.
The way it was written,
Okay.
I felt like sort of intimated that it was happening. And I didn't think that was appropriate. I think there are plenty of times when it's appropriate, but I think, like, just having thought about all the different presidents and vice presidents we've had over the years, like, I don't know that that's really the case. I
Okay.
think there are a number of times where we would do something different, which is why I wouldn't think that like the VP is a president-elect. Like that's not really how we use it. I mean, they might ascend to the presidency, or it might not be appropriate. And I think I don't know how to write that in a way that it sort of says that, which is why
Yeah.
I think I said take out what was in there, because I think just like with committee positions, you know, you have that the section above that. It'd be great if there were 2 board members on a committee and one stayed and one
Yeah.
rotated. Like, then the practicality of how we do it, like board members change. People might not want to continue doing it. I mean, they're like, that'd be great to do that, but it doesn't work exactly the way, you know, I think we would want it to if you know, the continuity was there. So I don't know if we could write down, you know, it would be great if I mean, because there's a whole number of things on board president, right? It'd be great if the board president wasn't a brand new board member who didn't have a clue,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I hope that's obvious. You know, it would be great if the board president had support of the board. Well, they need 4 votes. You know, they kind of have to have support of the board. You know, it would be great if the board president actually checked in with the needs of the board in leading the board. You know, I mean, there's a number of things that, like, I don't know, we need
Yeah.
to get that prescriptive, but.
So,
Thoughts from this side?
I was surprised to see that in there as he's sitting back.
Sorry, Mr. Reed.
you were
It says
surprised?
Vice President of the, yeah, maybe I slipped that one in. Maybe I was sneaky about that.
I do think you could put in that the vice president assumes the chair in the absence of the president. I think,
Okay.
You know,
I think that's,
at least put that in, and then
Yeah.
it's,
Foiled again.
you were foiled, you tried.
yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with
In
that,
the
and
yeah, okay. I can
do see-
understand that, yeah.
Mhm, for sure.
And I would just add, there are boards that make it a point to rotate every year. They don't keep anybody the same. That's not us. I think we've done a good job of rotating when appropriate and sticking with, you know, continuity
Yeah.
when appropriate. There are other boards there it's a lifetime appointment practically. You know, the expectation is they never rotate, and that's not us either.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is certainly, if there was something to write in here, I think it may be something along the lines of, we do want to share the roles, you know, and rotate when appropriate, or you know, it isn't sort of set it and forget it. And I don't know if that's necessary, but I mean that's really our philosophy of how we do board and committee assignments. Is we absolutely want to share, you know, the load. I mean, it's not like 3 of us have time and we all do it all. Like
Right.
that's not how it worked. I mean, if we had a few people that didn't do any of the actual work, like, we would be upset about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, that's
Right.
kind of how it works. And like, we try to help each other. I mean, we all have different schedules,
Yeah.
and different work, you know, scenarios, and you know, contrary to some folks' beliefs, this is not a day job that pays us to you know, have a living here. This is a volunteer role in a large extent, and we need to treat it as such. You know, when people ask me about running for school board, they ask how much time does it take, and I usually say as much time as you let it. You know, it could eat up a tremendous amount of time. And so in that vein, we do absolutely split the workload and try to make sure everybody is, you know, pulling their fair share. I don't know how to write that, and I don't know
I
that
don't
we need
either.
to.
All right, I can help you with some of this
Yeah.
language things.
I think there's just very little tweaking, and
Okay.
we'll get
I think
that.
this is great. I think
Thank
this
you.
is phenomenal work. Thanks for taking it on. I thought it was hazing
I did
when we
too.
gave it to the new board member, and I appreciate you coming through.
Thank you.
I would ditto that. I really appreciate the work that you put into this.
Yep, I will third that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Crane.
Yes.
And I will say, like, when we started this, it was more because we needed it.
Yes.
Like,
And-
it's nice to continue this because it's a nice to have, not that we need it.
Well, again, echoing what I said about the MASB conference, it was really nice to read the Code of Ethics and think, I don't have anybody that I would say doesn't follow these.
Yeah.
And it's I know how lucky I am to be on the board that I am right now, and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I think you also follow the, you know, the rule that you do these in good times, so you
Yes.
have them
Yes.
if you run into challenging times, right? That's not the time to try to create a document like this, so. All right, very good. Thank you so much. So you think you've got what you need now? We can make any final tweaks, and I can certainly help you with any.
Perfect. Thank you.
language. All right, we'll bring you back. We'll sign it, and we'll maybe then sit on it for a few months, kind of let it
Yeah.
marinate. You said you have that class next month, so if there's
I
anything
do.
you learn that you want to incorporate,
Yep.
we'll revisit again in July.
Great.
Okay, very good. Next up is item 9, citizen comments. Citizens are welcome to address the board on any topic at this point on the agenda. I have 3 citizens who had signed up earlier in the meeting. Can we do a quick check and see if there were any others who had signed up during the course of the meeting? I don't remember seeing anyone walk over, but let's just do a quick check. No additional citizens. Okay, great. And we will go ahead and get started. And I will just remind everyone, our process has not changed. If you'll please approach the microphone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. If you'll please state your name and address. Also remind you that calling out individuals by name, any personal attacks are inappropriate in this forum, and I will have to stop you and ask you to step away from the microphone. If we go down that route, we will begin with Stephen. I don't want to mispronounce your name. Could you say it for me, please? Sioma. Very good. Did I do it wrong?
No, you did well.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Very good. Sir, if you'll just state your name and address, and you will have 2 minutes.
Steve Sioma, 5109 Watauga. Now, some people were saying that after Oxford, they wanted to see more done. And we can understand it. There's so much that you can do in terms of security and doors and things of that nature, but these are addressing symptoms of a problem. There's a school in Louisiana. If you ever need some uplifting news, I'd say look it up. Dad's on Duty. There are these kids getting into fights and things were looking to escalate. Members of the community, a bunch of fathers, started talking, got some shirts printed out, and started showing up in the schools to mentor the kids, to be there to be a shoulder to lean on, or an ear to hear, or sometimes just give them a dad joke while sending them off to class. And these dads on duty took up their part in the community to directly help these kids feel comfortable and safe in school. They were started looking forward to coming to school. Now, I imagine that there's some logistical concerns in organizing something to that degree here, but if people want something done, why not give them the opportunity to do so directly? Now, I'm happy it's not my job to figure it out, but if anybody wanted to reach out, I'd be happy to help however I could.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments. Next we have, is it Justin Murdoch? Great, welcome Mr. Murdoch. State your name and address, you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Justin Murdoch, 6381 Snow Apple. A couple of points. The first one, I'm open to having my understanding corrected as it was given to me by a staff member at the junior high or middle school, but it's just a sign. It says diverse, inclusive, accepting, welcoming, safe space for everyone. And the way that it was explained to me was that if a teacher, staff member, something like this is seen to exemplify this standard, then they would have a sign placed on their door of their classroom. Maybe I'm correct, ma'am. That's what they said, as they were a safe person or their classroom was a safe space for a person to go if they needed to. And a number of teachers kind of on both sides of this were kind of worried about it. From one side, a teacher who was given this doesn't feel comfortable having it because they don't feel like, well, I'm not a counselor, I don't have a way to speak with somebody who is coming for counsel or whatever the case may be, and yet I'm not allowed to take this down. So I mean, I have to put up with it. And then the other side of it, there are teachers who are saying, well, if I don't have one of these, now people are kind of looking at me cross-eyed or whatever because I don't exemplify this, so now they're kind of subconsciously nervous around me. So that was just an interesting thing that was brought up. The second thing, did a little bit more looking into a couple of people, one specifically Dr. J. Marks, specifically in this instance, a podcast titled Understanding Self and Embracing the Conflict. If anyone hasn't listened to it, I would recommend it. If you have listened to it and still believe that he would be a good person to teach the staff of this community, then I think that you're very ill-guided in doing so, because it is full of racism. I'll call it what it is. But there will be more on that later. And then lastly, I do want to commend. Am I done?
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And finally, tonight we have Mr. Tim Parkin. Good evening, Mr. Parkin.
Hello,
Proceed.
Tim Parkin, 9100 Michigamme Road. In an effort to suppress DEI disinformation, the notes on the CSS website read, when we talk about equity and inclusion at Clarkston, we mean two things: eliminating barriers to student achievement and supporting a culture of respect. That sounds very commendable. However, if you find the DEI training audios and videos on the internet, you'll find a darker view of DEI. For example, and there are many, in How to Talk to Your Kids About Race, Racism, and Anti-Racism podcast, Oakland County Schools DEI consultant Dr. J. Marks begins disrespecting our community and country, and I quote, "I want to begin and provide a context when engaging in these types of conversation that I operate under the premise that the systems in this country and the institutions within the systems were built to be inequitable. They are built on the framework of racism and white supremacy." Our nation is functioning exactly as it was designed to do, and that is to be inequitable. So we either have a culture of respect or we don't. DEI is a stain on our community and our school systems and should not be taught to our children. I find it disrespectful that Dr. Marks, an African American who earns six-figure salary, sends his children to elite private schools, yet claims that America, which includes Oakland County and Clarkston, which is 85% white taxpayers, is systematically racist. Why are you allowing this individual to disrespect our community? Over 3 million African Americans have migrated to the United States over the past 50 years. 2 million from Africa, 1 million from the Caribbean. What do you call these people? Stupid? What do these migrants know that our school board and Dr. Marks seem to struggle with? It's that America is the least racist, most multi-ethnic, multiracial
Thank you, Mr.
country
Parkin.
in the history of the entire world. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We appreciate your participation in our meeting, our first meeting of the year tonight. Item 10 is information items. Our next Board of Education meeting will be Monday, February 14th at 7 p.m. So I clearly planned well. Tonight is the National Football Championship. Sorry about that, gentlemen. And next month is Valentine's Day. Sorry about that, ladies. I'm batting 2 for 2. We have to move into a closed session now. We will adjourn from the closed session. There are no decisions or no further discussion that will be made, so we will adjourn from our closed session. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we move into closed session for purposes of negotiations.
Support.
Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Egan?
Yes.
Mr. Heyer?
Yes.
Mr. Need?
Yes.
Ms. Catalina? Mrs. Crane?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis? Mrs. Horst?
Yes. We are in closed session. I will meet everyone in the room.